on their expectations turned down. And in fact, Abhishek, meanwhile, the common man is always expect that there should be a tax rebate in this budget. And in fact, this is the last full-fledged budget of the union government. And even unmissable coverage on the Republic TV on this budget. And this budget is live with Arnab and even from 8 a.m. along with his team. So stay tuned to Republic TV to this for the rolling coverage of union budget with Arnab at 8 p.m.
The Dalal Street will be keenly watching out for the last full budget of Modi government 2.0. While it is a mammoth task for the finance minister to strike a balance between fiscal prudence and capital expenditure allocation, the market is anticipating increased allocation in manufacturing, pharma, defense, specialty chemicals and technology sectors. Market sentiment would also be determined on whether the government is on track to meet its fiscal deficit target of 6.4% of GDP for this financial year and the disinvestment target that would be set for the next financial year. Amid inflationary concerns coupled with recession fears, there are high hopes for tax relief in the budget. The salaried class expects an increase in basic tax exemption limit and increase in the limit for deductions under Section 80C of the Income Tax Act. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's recent comment raised many hopes for the salaried class.
मैं आने वाले बजट के ऊपर तो कोई कुछ बोल नहीं सकती हूं और मैं भी मिडिल क्लास की हूं. मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं. आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास सो आई नो. बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं. कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है.
While further expanding scope for production-linked incentive schemes is on the wish list, market experts also believe that any tinkering with the long-term capital gains tax could dampen the investor sentiment.
We can expect a very good budget for the common man. I am expecting that the exemption limit, basic exemption limit, should go from 2.5 to at least 3 lakhs, if not more. Same way, even on the ATC, which is the basic income tax deduction section. In the ATC also we are expecting that it will go from 1.5 to about 2.5 if we go by the way inflation has been.
बिजनेसमैन जो है क्योंकि अनऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर में आता है तो फोकस बहुत कम रहता है. एक तो लिमिट जो है मैं समझता हूँ कि इसको एनहांस करने की ज़रूरत है. स्लैब जो है उसको बढ़ाने की ज़रूरत है.
हमें बजट में ज़रूरत इस बात की है कि जीएसटी कोई की नए सिरे से रिव्यू होना चाहिए क्योंकि जीएसटी के अंदर अभी भी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड सिस्टम्स बहुत सारे हैं. वहीं दूसरी ओर इनकम टैक्स का जो स्लैब है वो निश्चित रूप से कम होना चाहिए. तीसरा, क्योंकि अब हम एक डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी वाले युग में जा रहे हैं और पुराना जो व्यापार करने का तौर तरीका है वो लगभग उससे भिन्न है, तो लिहाजा सरकार को चाहिए कि एक एमनेस्टी स्कीम दी जाए देश भर के सभी व्यापारियों को कि 2022 तक जो कुछ हो गया वो हो गया, लेकिन 2023 से हम डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी पर चलेंगे. लेकिन 2022 तक का कोई भी अगर किसी की गलती है तो उसको उसके लिए दंडित नहीं किया जाएगा.
We don't have too much of fiscal room. But on the other hand, we had great tax collection also. GST collection has been decent. Income tax collection also has been okay. So there has to be something. So the government may give some tax concessions. And according to me, all these tax concessions are possible if government goes in for a major disinvestment drive. That's what I expect.
Will the budget lead to market share remains to be seen.
If the fiscal deficit target is met and the finance minister says that we are on target to meet next year's achievements and targets given in the FRBM, then the markets are going to give a thumbs up.
India cannot be ignored anymore. World leaders are cheering the India story.
Those powerhouses of their respective regions and to a large extent for the world economy as China and India are, you cannot ignore them and you cannot dictate to them that they should develop
Ladies and gentlemen, India is poised to be the next manufacturing hub, and driving the country's economy is corporate India. What will be Nirmala Sitharaman's blueprint for India Inc. as she presents the budget for Amrit Kaal? Let's find out the India Inc. expectations in this report.
There has been meetings led by the Prime Minister. Their Finance Minister has been talking of sustained revival of the economy.
Our economy's doing well business is largely because the confidence in what has happened in the last 2 years, palpably felt by people who so deserve it, are standing out. And that is why I would think that the economy's revival is on a sustained path.
And just like every year, various sectors have their own set of expectations from the budget, including India INC. Here is what India INC is expecting from the Modi government: increased privatizations, increase in capex, and more employment-linked incentive schemes. The CII says that the government should reduce rates of personal income tax to increase disposable incomes and revive the demand. The government is talking about making India a manufacturing hub.
So as much you're preparing yourself for a long-drawn recession in the Western world, the developed world, I would think it is also the best time for you to work out strategies for drawing those manufacturers from there to India.
Will Budget 2023 deliver on all these aspirations? Bureau Report, Republic TV.
To table budget at around 11 a.m. Before that, she will be leaving from her residence at around 9:15. She will be heading to Finance Minister and then to President House and then to Parliament, where a short cabinet meet will take place and then budget would be tabled. After this very short break, we will be getting more and more voices as there are a lot of expectations from this very budget. Stay tuned for all the live updates.
11,000 placements last year. At Amity, we are committed to nurturing passionate, hardworking and proactive professionals.
India cannot be ignored anymore. World leaders are cheering the India story.
those powerhouses of their respective regions and to a large extent for the world economy as China and India are, you cannot ignore them and you cannot dictate to them that they should develop the way which will continue to enrich.
India is being acknowledged on a global platform.
Lifestyle for the environment and his call for papers, I'm guided to the ancient texts of India and enlightened by their great respect for the natural world and the environment.
With the G20 presidency, the world is looking to India.
The impression of this country is that India is undeniably a global powerhouse. Not only is it a hard power, evidenced by economic scale and population, but also a soft power equipped with well-known films, cuisines, history, and renowned figures.
The bold moves on economic strides under the Modi government have gained global appreciation.
A lot has been done in the past years under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. Naturally, he's a patriot of his country. And his idea of make in India, it matters. Both in economic-wise and in the ethic. So India has made tremendous steps forward in development, and the future belongs to India.
India is undoubtedly the global bright spot. Now the world is watching whether Budget 2023 will be a catalyst to India's growth story. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
लिबर्टी जरूर लेना आवश्यक है। मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं। आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास, सो आई नो। बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं। कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है अब तक।
The Dalal Street will be keenly watching out for the last full budget of Modi government 2.0. While it is a mammoth task for the finance minister to strike a balance between fiscal prudence and capital expenditure allocation, the market is anticipating increased allocation in manufacturing, pharma, defense, specialty chemicals and technology sectors. Market sentiment would also be determined on whether the government is on track to meet its fiscal deficit target of 6.4% of GDP for this financial year and the disinvestment target that would be set for the next financial year. Amid inflationary concerns coupled with recession fears, there are high hopes for tax relief in the budget. The salaried class expects an increase in basic tax exemption limit and increase in the limit for deductions under Section 80C of the Income Tax Act. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's recent comment raised many hopes for the salaried class.
मैं आने वाले बजट के ऊपर तो कोई कुछ बोल नहीं सकती हूं और मैं
India has a vision how this world should look like and how India's role should look like in this changing world. And we are working very hard to make it happen in the General Assembly.
$11,000 placements last year. At Amity, we are committed to nurturing passionate, hardworking and proactive professionals.
The Dalal Street will be keenly watching out for the last full budget of Modi government 2.0. While it is a mammoth task for the finance minister to strike a balance between fiscal prudence and capital expenditure allocation, the market is anticipating increased allocation in manufacturing, pharma, defense, specialty chemicals and technology sectors. Market sentiment would also be determined on whether the government is on track to meet its fiscal deficit target of 6.4% of GDP for this financial year and the disinvestment target that would be set for the next financial year. Amid inflationary concerns coupled with recession fears, there are high hopes for tax relief in the budget. The salaried class expects an increase in basic tax exemption limit and increase in the limit for deductions under Section 80C of the Income Tax Act. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's recent comment raised many hopes for the salaried class.
मैं आने वाले बजट के ऊपर तो कोई कुछ बोल नहीं सकती हूं और मैं भी मिडिल क्लास की हूं। मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं। आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास, सो आई नो। बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं। कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है।
While further expanding scope for production-linked incentive schemes is on the wish list, market experts also believe that any tinkering with the long-term capital gains tax could dampen the investor sentiment.
We can expect a very good budget for the common man. I'm expecting that the exemption limit, basic exemption limit, should go from 2.5 to at least 3 lakhs, if not more. Same way, even on the ATC, which is the basic income tax deduction section. In the ATC also we are expecting that it will go from 1.5 to about 2.5 if we go by the way inflation has been.
बिजनेसमैन जो है क्योंकि अनऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर में आता है तो फोकस बहुत कम रहता है। एक तो लिमिट जो है मैं समझता हूँ कि इसको एनहांस करने की ज़रूरत है, स्लैब जो है उसको बढ़ाने की ज़रूरत है।
हमें बजट में ज़रूरत इस बात की है कि जीएसटी कोई की नए सिरे से रिव्यू होना चाहिए, क्योंकि जीएसटी के अंदर अभी भी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड सिस्टम्स बहुत सारे हैं। वहीं दूसरी ओर इनकम टैक्स के जो स्लैब है वो निश्चित रूप से कम होना चाहिए। तीसरा, क्योंकि अब हम एक डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी वाले युग में जा रहे हैं और पुराना जो व्यापार करने का तौर तरीका है वो लगभग उससे भिन्न है, तो लिहाजा सरकार को चाहिए कि एक एमनेस्टी स्कीम दी जाए देश भर के सभी व्यापारियों को कि 2022 तक जो कुछ हो गया वो हो गया, लेकिन 2023 से हम डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी पर चलेंगे। और लेकिन 2000
Well, good evening, friends. As we build up to the rolling coverage of Union Budget with Nirmala Sitharaman, the Finance Minister of the country, taking the podium inside the Lok Sabha at 11 a.m. And of course, we build up to coming off Arnab Goswami and take charge. Let's begin with the headlines. As the world gives a thumbs up, the countdown to much-awaited budget has now begun. Opposition set to raise unemployment and inflation. It's a tightrope walk for Nirmala. IMF predicts only growth for India. All eyes now on the budget 2023. Modi government 2.0 is set to present last full budget ahead of 2024 polls. Nirmala set to roll out budget. Aam Aadmi asks, are tax cuts on the cards? Unmissable budget coverage with Arnab and team shortly, live. All right, very good morning and welcome, friends, as we begin our build-up to Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman taking center stage inside Parliament and presenting what's billed as the Modi government's last full budget ahead of the 2024 general elections, third for the Modi government. Joining me live, Suhail Seth. He's joining us live from Goa, Managing Partner, Council H India and Brand Guru. Also joining me, Ashish Wakankar, Founder and CIO, Equipoise Capital. And also Emma Venkatesh, political analyst and lawyer, live from Dubai. In fact, giving us some global flavor there. Let me begin with Suhail. You first, Brand Guru. And you know, macros look good. The direct tax mop up really looking good at 25% above the last time. The GST, in fact, the numbers came last evening at the second highest in the history of the tax rollout at 1.55 lakh crore rupees. Manufacturing activity at its highest as indicated by the Purchasing Managers Index numbers. And of course, since you keep a close tab on the services industry, I was looking at headlines. The banking loans are up to services much more than manufacturing industry. As Brand Guru, Suhail, how does Brand India look as we prepare for Nirmala Sitharaman's budget in a couple of hours from now?
In the case of Indira Gandhi, it looked very good from near the moon, but today from planet Earth, it looks splendid. I've always been a great optimist. I've always said that some of the things that Modi has done, people may abuse him in the short term, but in the long term, they will thank him. Look at some of the big piece items that have happened. Number one, Apple has shifted large parts of its manufacturing to India. It's a great piece of news for the whole Made in India platform. Number two, as you rightly talked about GST, it's a great tribute on this day to the late Arun Jaitley, who brought about GST and the IBC. So everyone at that time were naysayers, ki kuch nahi hoga, it's a bad idea, but you've seen how it works. I think India is doing phenomenally well. Phenomenally well for two reasons. Number one, the government. This is, as I've said earlier, this is the cleanest union cabinet post-independence. It augurs well. There is no policy, Machiavellian behavior which we used to see in the past. For all the people who said things, I will still say Nirmala Sitharaman has been an outstanding finance minister. Shaktikant Das has been an even more outstanding governor of the Reserve Bank. And when both took office, people were doubting, what will happen? What has the government done? It has done four things. Number one, it has proven the fact that policies will be for all, one policy which will benefit everyone. Number two, the government has disallowed any leakage where there were direct benefit transfers. Let me tell you one thing. People will thank Modi in the years to come when free rations were given during the most heinous period of human existence, which is during the pandemic. These were direct benefit transfers. Rajiv Gandhi had once famously said out of every 1 rupee, only 15 paisa reaches the intended recipient. That has been done away with. Number three, you very rightly alluded to the fact that, look, more and more people are investing. Look at the investments that are taking place in India.
Yes.
Look at the way people are actually warming up. Now with our presidency of G20, India will be even at a greater global high table.
Yes.
The fourth final thing is that today we are protected from global headwinds because of the intrinsic nature of our economy, which is a domestic consumptive economy.
Yeah.
We don't need the Chinese or the Americans or the Fijians or the Norwegians to buy our goods.
Yeah.
We've got a robust economy.
Yeah.
My only worry, and I know Modi and Sitharaman will address that, my worry is bring back the MSME to the strengths that they were before. Because the MSME sector has been badly hurt.
Yeah.
And it's been hurt for various reasons. If we are able to bring that back, you've got a great story. You've got great startup India, you've got great digital India, and you've got a great brand India.
Yeah. So, the last point that you made, MSME, in fact, was mentioned in the economic survey yesterday as a bright spot. In fact, the chief economic advisor gave the example of how almost 500 MSMEs contributed to INS Vikrant, the new aircraft carrier that India built on its own. And also, you rightly mentioned, Suhail, that the capital expenditure that has been done by the government has in fact crowded in private investment as well. And that's being seen from the uptick that's there in the loan books of banks to the private sector. Let me take this to M.R. Venkatesh. M.R., budget, as much as it is an accounting document of the government, it is also a policy document and hence used for political signaling. The fact that we are almost every time mentioning that this is the last full budget ahead of the general elections, are you suspecting, expecting that there might be an element of populism or something looking ahead into the general elections in the budget?
Let me put it this way. I have been watching budgets since 1985. And since I graduated from high school, I've been a budget fanatic, I would say, confess. Last night I couldn't sleep. For the first time, I'm so excited because of only one reason. We have never been in such a sweet spot ever before. Economic sweet spot, I think we are virtually there as a country. Of course, a dil mange more, probably we can go up to 8% or 8.5% growth. But we know we have just come back from a horrible pandemic shutdown, and we have just turned the clock 180 degrees. We are back to our normal growth. So that is a big headline. And the second important headline, which probably you alluded to, is that the fiscal position of the government, central government, is at its very best today. In the sense that today we are seeing a robust tax collection, not only of GST, but also of direct taxes. Now, you go back and unwind the clock for the year 21-22, you will see that we are going to collect somewhere around 5 lakh crores more than the budget. And this year, again, we are going to collect something close to 4 to 5 lakh crores over and above the budget. That's going to be humongous. That is the type of revenue that is coming in. If this revenue comes in, obviously the government will have to spend, and that is being spent on capital expenditure, that will be spent on revenue expenditure, both sides. Now, there will be headroom for the finance minister in the run-up to the general elections, not to be reckless, but she can definitely take care of the welfare program and the measures that the government promised. There could be a number of policy play. It could be a small tax cut in salaried classes, in the direct tax fund. The petrol prices could be reduced. The multitude of headroom that the finance minister has is mind-boggling today. The third one, lastly, you always start, the pundits today will start moaning and groaning at the fiscal deficit. And virtually it has become an persona non grata as far as economists are concerned in the Indian context, because we have seen fiscal deficits and fiscal deficits and fiscal deficits. What we have done, we have changed the very narrative of fiscal deficit thanks to this government, which has put that money into capital expenditure, and capex, as Mr. Sohail said rightly pointed out, is crowding in public players, and the virtuous cycle in the banks has begun. The capital expenditure cycle has begun. Banks are lending more, banks are lending big time. And slowly we see that the bank's book being cleaned, that the policy paralysis that was there, the legacy of the UPA government has been cleaned. The Prevention of Corruption Act has been amended. Okay, there can be objections to it, but that is secondary. Then the NCLT procedures are now streamlined. So the banks are feeling confident to lend. So you see all around there is virtue signaling happening. Only thing, and I would request the finance minister, go bold for a massive tax cut. Tax cut, and this may be the time. Reduce the GST from 18% to 16%. That would be a phenomenal boost. It will cut down inflation, it will keep the buoyancy going, and it will be it will be a huge signal to the Indian market. I think that could be the mother of all populism, mother of all welfareism, mother of all economic policies, all rolled into one.
Okay, and that constitutes excellent conservative economics as well, Emma Venkatesh. We'll come to those things in greater detail as we continue our conversation. Let me involve Ashish Wakankar also. He brings in the market's perspective. Ashish, for the last so many years now, the markets have been expecting something will happen on the long-term capital gains tax, something will happen on the securities transaction tax. But somehow I think the finance minister has not really been in a mood to oblige. You think it could happen this time? And what's the markets ask? What's really going to cheer the markets? If you have some thoughts on that to begin with.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be back on this budget day, and good morning to my co-panelists as well. First and the foremost, I think it is important to take a look at what we have achieved in the last, say, 3, 4, 5 years on a continuous basis, budget after budget. Unlike the developed world, and I've said this in the past 2 budgets as well, unlike the developed world, which probably did not learn its lesson, and after post the GFC, and at that time India was also along with the developed world. We gave a stimulus, and it was a consumption-led stimulus. What you had was massive inflation and a collapse in economic growth. India is the only country, in my opinion, which learned its lesson, and during this pandemic, we deviated away from convention. And when I mean convention, I'm looking at the developed world. They again went the same path, and you had stimulus given by them. India's stimulus was more to protect the MSMEs, and we went on the investment-led growth. We are witnessing, just to give a number in perspective, we are probably the only country in the world which has managed to increase the tax to GDP ratio during the pandemic. We are probably the only country in the world which has managed to bring down debt as a percentage of GDP in the last few years. Not just this, just take a look at where we were 5 or 6 years back as far as external debt is concerned. We have brought that down also from 24%, we are barely down to now 19%, and within that, nearly 30+% of that external debt is rupee oriented. So I could just go on and on in terms of the positives that are there, and coming to the specific question on the markets. Well, somebody just said "Ye dil mange more," and there is no end to what somebody could and the markets could keep on asking. It is important, I must highlight over here, that India needs the capital. India's tax collection is not good enough for meeting its infrastructure requirements, so we need external capital for sure. But whatever steps in terms of the capital gains the market has, that the government has taken or the budget has announced, has the market reacted negatively to that? Have we not seen the markets go up significantly, post May 2020, and that too year on year? We've seen a tough year last year, but even then we've seen a positive 4 to 5% return that the markets are given. So I don't really think the markets are too worried about on the capital gains. There is an expectation, and maybe that could be done post the elections as well, of rationalizing and bringing some kind of streamlining towards the period, towards the long-term and short-term capital gains tax that is levied. But I think the one number, I'll just complete this, the one number the market is really fixated on is the capital expenditure. If that number continues to show the growth that we have seen in the last 3-4 years, the quality of the deficit matters, not the absolute number itself. So if you look at even the economic survey that was announced yesterday, it's a hugely positive and outlook that the economic survey document brings out. And if we are actually looking at even say 10% growth, nominal growth next year, we should see the fiscal deficit go below, and as the economic survey projects nearly 11% nominal growth, we are in the range of 5.8 to 5.9 fiscal deficit in FY24. So all in all, I don't think market is really worried. The one thing I particularly will be looking at, and I'm sure the market is looking at, is the quality of the deficit and the initiative that was taken, the impetus that was given through capital expenditure. That remains. We are home.
Yeah, Ashish, we are also joined by Nasir Salim. He is managing partner, Flexi Capital. In fact, I am told that any moment now we would be joined by Arnab Goswami, our editor-in-chief. I wanted to come to Sohail, but let me go to Nasir Salim first. Sohail, since you are in Goa and hence perhaps a little close to Russia, I would want to talk to you about global headwinds and some areas of concern. But let me begin with Nasir Salim. Nasir, we had Ashish Wakankar just mentioning that the government can't be sort of doing all the heavy lifting. There has to be some coming in of external capital as well. What measures do you think that the government and Nirmala Sitharaman could be announcing, or you could be expecting that they find mention in the budget so that that bit is taken care of?
You see, there is no doubt. Firstly, good morning to all your viewers and to all of you. And thank you for having me on your show. See, I think there are 2-3 very key important factors here. I think as we set out the day for the budget and our expectations, and I completely feel the need to mention this today, is that we are looking more particularly today the importance of fiscal prudence with infrastructure investment coming. So there has to be a fiscal discipline with infrastructure spending that we need to see. I think a fiscal prudence budget is something which we are looking forward to. The markets have also kind of factored in all future, reports to expect what the Honorable Finance Minister is going to state out today. But to answer your specific question, see, there is no doubt that today we are in a global turmoil. I mean, India is in a sweet spot, no doubt. We've had favorable demographics, consumption, helping us. And we've also seen a very interesting, chapter fold up as far as India is concerned in terms of, these new tech startups.
No.
So to answer your question, if I need to look at one key expectation from the budget for attracting FDI, my sense is that, the government has outlined, there are 13 sectors which are currently outlined for the PLI. I would be happy to hear more about inclusion of further sectors. So your production-linked incentive today has already outlined 13 sectors. There are sectors such as the leather industry, which are very important in the MSME space as far as India is concerned. There are other sectors related to automobiles and so on and so forth. I think certain of those sectors which can be included in the PLI.
I'm interrupting you because Arnab has joined us, so it's over to him now, actually.
Yeah, thanks very much, Abhishek. Sorry, I got a little late out here. I thought we were discussing the big picture. First of all, good morning to everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Nice and sunny morning. Warm morning in Mumbai. I don't know. Mumbai never has, it has never had a spot of winter. And when it got down to 16 or 17 degrees, everyone was out there, in their mufflers and monkey caps and everything. Point being, this is a pre-election budget.
Yeah.
right? And the Modi government is having these pre-budget meetings with all the stakeholders ahead of the budget. The intent is to hear the concerns of all the stakeholders. Has the budget become less important, Sohail? As an instrument, has the budget, please unmute yourself. Has the budget become less important than it used to be?
It has. I'll tell you why the budget has become less important under Narendra Modi. Because certain laws and certain policies have been taken regardless of politics. Remember that day, Arnab, when GST was being brought in by Jaitley, when IBC was being brought in, everyone abused this government. What did the government do? Disregarded it. You know, when a caravan moves, it doesn't stop just to notice every barking dog. I think the government has also exhibited another thing, that policies will be created. If you have an issue with the policy and if you think it's malafide, take us to court. But we're not going to change the policy because of either lobbies or vested interest. This has shown remarkably well for us as a country. 1.55 lakh crores is what you mopped up in GST yesterday. Number two, what Gadkari and therefore the Union Cabinet under Modi are doing in terms of public spending in infrastructure is remarkable. My only thing, Arnab, and you know, the Indian Hotels company which runs the Taj has declared phenomenal results yesterday. It shows if this government gives tourism and real estate though they have through REIT, but if they give tourism infrastructure type rating, let's say if they type rate tourism also as infrastructure, it'll make bank lending easier at more competitive rates. We are in a great place, Arnab. For all the naysayers, for all the goddamn BBCs of the world, we are in a great shape while those Johnnies are worried about, food coupons. So let's not belittle our country in order to expand our hatred politically.
Absolutely.
You know, the opposition must realize they are opposition in India. They're not the opposition of Pakistan or of Fiji. For once, give the man some credit. For once, cut the government some slack. And for once behave like responsible Indians who believe in India, the cause of India, the potential of India, and what India has achieved.
I want
we should all celebrate this, not denigrate it.
This gloom and doom behavior has to stop, like yesterday. Everybody, all the gloom and doom guys, there may be problems, but everybody, hoping that the Adani FPO will collapse. What will be the impact? What will be the political impact if the Adani FPO collapses? Why ultra high net individuals investing in Adani? Why did Adani not collapse? I mean, it's crazy. It makes no sense anymore. Let's look at the bigger picture. Let's understand what the world is saying, MR. The world is saying that we are a bright spot. The world is saying that there is optimistic growth forecast. There is higher capital expenditure. There's a rebound of private consumption. There's a near universal vaccination coverage. There's strengthening of the balance sheets of the corporates. Well-capitalized public sector banks, right? Well-capitalized public sector banks. And of course, needless to mention, fantastic news channels like Republic. Everything's good about India. I don't know what the problem is, MR. I want this negativity to stop. The World Bank is predicting we're going to grow at 6.6%. The world is growing at 1.7%. And these people are crying.
Yes.
I mean, MR, if I'll get into the details of the budget later. I just wanted to wake up this morning and tell people, for God's sake, the ADP is pegging our growth at 7.2. Asia is growing at 4%. We're 3% ahead of Asia. And we are contributing to the Asian average.
Exactly.
You know,
MR, today India is very heavyweight in the global. Very heavy weight for the global economy because we are the lone bright spot. And despite, there are doomsayers about the American economy, I don't care about it. And despite all these things, now the growth projection is around 7% for this fiscal. And the next year already the numbers are around 6.5 to 7%. Now, the most important thing you pointed out, Arnab, is that the Indian entrepreneur has come off stage. There is a huge respect. I'm sure Sohail will second me on this. Usually it doesn't, but at least on this he will do it. That the Indian entrepreneur has come on stage. There is a brand value attached to the Indian entrepreneur. And till date, we had a Tata or an Ambani doing it. Today we have millions of them conquering places as distant as Russia or America or Japan.
Yeah.
Arnab is an example
Sohail,
of
louder.
entrepreneurship.
Sohail, louder. Yeah, Sohail, go louder.
I said Arnab is an example of entrepreneurship.
No, I was
From a
pulling your leg,
nation of
sir.
shopkeepers,
I
we
was
become a
pulling
nation
your
of
leg.
entrepreneurs.
Sir, I was pulling your leg. Sorry. I was just pulling your leg, nothing else. In the morning, let us not be so...
No, I'm only responding to you. I don't know which leg you're worried about. I'm only responding to the comment. I said I agree with you. I think when you're in Dubai, there's a bit of a signal lag.
No. I thought you were too serious. I thought I'll pull you on a budget day. That's all, sir.
No, he's never serious. It'll take you another lifetime to pull me, but never mind. Continue.
Okay. Now the point here is the Indian entrepreneurs has come of age and is dominating the global commerce and industry. That is a big salute, I think, required from the industry to this government, because Indian entrepreneurs are always there, but they never flourished. They were always kept on a tight leash by the government. There were crony capitalism. There were policies which were done to favor a particular few. They were never policies that were generally for the entrepreneur class as a whole. All these things are behind us. We have insolvency code. We have taxes more or less settling. Of course, as a chartered accountant, I will put the hat and say you can still further tweak here and there. But the macro picture that you wanted, Arnab, is that it is the sweetest spot that we can ever have in the Indian economic macroeconomic history of this country.
No, you saw the economic survey. We all saw the economic survey. I don't know what we thought about it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I thought it was conservative also, Ashish. I thought it was conservative. They are saying fiscal broad range, such a broad range, right? 6 to 6.8%. Why such a broad range, fiscal? Are they lowering expectations, Ashish?
Arnab, so Arnab, just before you walked in, I mentioned about the outlook and the roadmap which has for this budget that the economic survey has laid. We are looking, I mean, the people are fixated with the fiscal deficit number. But I think there are innumerable, tailwinds as far as India is concerned. I mean, just take a look at it. Inflation has been coming down. So
let's talk about fiscal deficit. Let's talk about fiscal deficit. I want to take you up on fiscal deficit. I think Nasir also wants to come in maybe on that. So my question is, will there be a moderated fiscal deficit target? You know, fiscal deficit been growing past few years, maybe because of the pandemic, Nasir. This time, will the finance minister take a more moderated approach from the heights of 9% or more in 21 to ensure some kind of a delicate balance between building growth momentum and retaining fiscal prudence? Or will we say, let's just grow, let's just build, let's just spend, you know? What do you think?
Good morning, Arnab. Great to be back on your show, and wish you and the Republic team all the very best for the new year. So, before, I mean, that's a fantastic question you raised. See, I think if you have to look back at the historical numbers to get some idea on gross borrowings for the central government and for India is concerned. So, there is no doubt that there has to be a lot of strike a right balance, Arnab, between your fiscal number, deficit number, which is going to come out. Now, I'll give you certain numbers, which I was going through yesterday as well, Arnab. Our gross borrowing for the next fiscal year, and this is from a report which has come out across some 45 odd economists, are projecting a number of close to about 16 trillion rupees. So in terms of dollar terms, it's about $198 billion. Now, obviously, that is higher than the estimated number, Arnab, because the estimated number for this fiscal, for example, was 14.2 trillion rupees. Now, if you look at historical debt, right from the 1970s, the last 50-year average, we've been always been between 4 to 5%.
Yeah.
But the point to be noted here is that we didn't have a COVID-like situation in the past. We've had a situation where in 2019, all the way end of 2019, all of last year, we saw the government putting out doles, putting out money in the hands of the citizens, certain sectors like MSME, SME. So obviously, I think the number is going to be far more higher than the average. And our sense is that this is going to be somewhere between a 6.8 to a 7.2% odd number.
Yeah.
I told you the estimated number is about 16 trillion rupees. To put another perspective in place, Arnab, when the Narendra Modi government came in 2014, our fiscal
No, but
budget deficit number.
1 minute. 1 minute. Question being, I'm aware of those numbers, but you know, in the last 2 years, and by the way, Jim Rogers is joining us from Singapore, Abhishek. He's chairman of Rogers Holdings. He loves China, hates India, and I fight with him every single budget morning. And he should be changing his opinion now. He should be changing his opinion because China has become the black hole of darkness in the world economy, being propped up by a resurgent India. Jim?
Good morning. I love India, I love China, and I love Arnab.
That's okay. No, but have you changed your opinion or not over the last 1 year?
Well, I'm bullish on China. I think China is growing well, and I'm bullish on India, as long as India does the right thing. I mean, building big deficits is not good for India. India cannot become the great country it should be if it has big deficits and builds up debt.
Sorry, can you tell me that again? What exactly is your problem? Because what do you want the fiscal deficit? He wants the fiscal deficit to be 1%. He doesn't want us, MR, the problem with him is he doesn't want us, to spend. He doesn't want India to spend on infrastructure. He doesn't want India to build the roads, to build the highways, to build the competitive infrastructure. He doesn't realize that same fiscal deficit that he's talking about is the very reason why we have a universally successful vaccination scheme, whereas his country is falling down the black hole of endless COVID cycles. So I think, Emma, let's take Jim on a little bit out here. Every single budget morning he does this from Singapore. He is what I call an institutional short seller. He is a short seller. He is on China's side. No, MR fiscal deficit. I'm tired of these people from foreign countries teaching us how to run our economy. Yes, MR.
Let me tell Jim, listen.
MR, go for it, MR.
Jim, listen.
Go for it, MR.
Fiscal deficit, don't be like an economics professor.
Yeah, a bad economics professor.
Yeah, in the Indian context, it is becoming irrelevant. You understand our debt to GDP ratio is still manageable. It's less than 7. You are talking about countries which are more than 250, 300% and doing whatever they are doing. We have a robust revenue. You see that the budget estimates are being exceeded year on year in these troubled times. And we are collecting more money from our people. We are spending more money on the infrastructure. We are putting more money where you always wanted it. And when it is happening, you come and crib that the fiscal deficit is high. I don't understand. Apart from what malice that Arnab alludes to you, I don't see any sound economics in what you say, sir.
Well, I will repeat to you that throughout history, countries that debase the currency and build up big debts ultimately pay the price. India has been a great country in the past and can be a great country in the future, but not if you're irresponsible and just spend a lot of money. Of course, I love for you to
define irresponsibility.
Don't.
Can I have the guests on the left-hand side of the screen? Define irresponsibility.
I strongly object to that word irresponsible. We are spending the most responsibly. And how do you say the capital expenditure? There is infrastructure pipeline that is going on, which is 100 lakh crores. And you tell me what is wrong in spending on that? How does irresponsibility fit into the Indian infrastructure pipeline? Explain to me that.
Well, I don't know how old you are, sir, or whether you have children or not, but if you worry about the future, you will not take this approach. You will try to be more restrained and build up your sound economy. I'm all for infrastructure.
You mean to say America doesn't do it? American debt is $31 trillion.
In the future, but
American debt is $31 trillion.
Now.
American debt is $31 trillion, sir. How do you explain that? When American GDP is hardly 20, American debt is more than $31 trillion, US federal debt.
How do you explain that?
Ashish Wakankar also coming in. Ashish, yes, go on, Ashish.
I'm sorry.
Go on, Ashish. Go on, Ashish.
No, I'm sorry. MR, you mentioned that America's debt is $31 trillion. You add to that the unfunded liability that they have, it's another $93 trillion. So you're looking at, so when somebody says this, and with all due respect to you, sir, Dr. Rogers, with all due respect to you, I don't really care about, it's not my business to comment on America, but I'll still give two numbers over here. America's total debt to GDP, as a percentage of America's GDP, is around 300%, and America's total debt to the global GDP is around 80-85%. I don't even know how and when, or if at all, they are going to even pay back. But that's none of my
ask him American inflation prices. Ask him the inflation rate in America, Ashish. Ask him the inflation rate in America. And no, tell him, ask him about the inflation rate in America.
Yeah, it's the first time.
I do not want India to wind up.
No, it's the first time in the last 30 years that I have been in the market. I had never in my wildest dream imagined that India's inflation will be lower than the developed world. I had never imagined India's inflation will be lower than US, UK and most of the developed world. And I think that is remarkable. The quality of fiscal deficit is all that matters, Dr. Rogers, that and we are not spending irresponsibly. There is a dedicated infrastructure pipeline. There is productivity linked incentives which have been given, and that has been done out of rationalization of petroleum subsidies. It's one of the most rational way in which the money has been spent. Plus, this is an exceptional year in which you had food and fertilizer subsidies adding, and which came as a rude shock because of the Ukraine crisis, and hence you have a 6.4. But as you move towards next year, you will see food and fertilizer, subsidy going down because of the inflation, and you will see fiscal deficit come down to around 5.8. We are, as per the set glide path, going to achieve 4.5% fiscal deficit by FY26. I have not, and Arnab, if he gives me 2 minutes, I will explain the real bonanza that is coming India's way through the nano urea that the government has gone upon. We could actually be staring at, in the next 5 to 10 years, at abolishing entirely the fertilizer subsidy. Believe me, the finer parts is something, Dr. Rogers, you probably have missed. So the only difference of opinion I have with you is
I like this. No, don't. You're being too polite. You're being too polite. Sohail also wants to come in. Abhishek wants to come in. I would just say two small points. The national debt of the US has increased every year over the last 10 years. And Jim, you're totally aware the United States has hit its $31.4 trillion legal limit on borrowing. So the United States is an economically illegal country in terms of its own borrowing numbers. Please understand.
Yes.
Jim, you agree or not? Jim, you agree or not?
I'm not saying the U.S. is doing a good thing. I'm saying I do not want India to wind up like the U.S. and like the U.K.
We are not.
These were countries that were very rich and they went bankrupt. You want to do that?
Just to add some numbers, our debt as a proportion of GDP went up to about 90% because of the slippages that happened during the pandemic years. It's back to 80% now. So 85% now. So we are doing fine. We are controlling it. The government is aware of it. The government is absolutely in control of
this
it. So
fiscal deficit thing, they are trying to say, I want to go to Sohail, this is what all the cynics try to do. They try to tell you are a macroeconomically unstable country. No, we are the most stable country macroeconomically. Our fiscal deficit will go down. It went over 10% only because of the pandemic. In fact, the debt of the states is also expected to ease. That is according to the Reserve Bank of India. So viewers, if you're watching today, have confidence. Have confidence. Take on people like Jim Rogers. Destroy their arguments with ease. And over, PK Basu is joining us this morning. And Sohail wants to come in as well. Sohail.
Jim, let me tell you 3 things about India. India is like the bumblebee. Aerodynamically, the bumblebee isn't supposed to fly because of its structure. But the bumblebee doesn't know that it flies happily. We will continue to soar in spite of all your macroeconomic all your theorizing. Number one. Number two, John Maynard Keynes, who came from your profession, said in the long run, we are all dead. So let's not worry about what will happen 100 years ago. Number three, why are we different? We are different because we have a consumptive economy. We don't have to rely on other countries to buy our arms. We don't have to create wars between countries in order to sell armaments. We don't have to do all these cheap tactics. We're in a great place. Respect that great place. You're in Singapore. You don't have any freedoms. I mean, you can barely, even your signal is weak, even your internet is weak. So, we've come a long way. Give us credit. I love the fact that you're empathetic towards us. I love the fact that you care for us and you don't want us to fail. We won't fail. We need people who understand the realities of India, not the realities of economics. India is a country. It's not a classroom. We need people to understand who are the practitioners and who are the recipients of any economic benefit. This is not a university classroom where you take out a book and say, oh, blah, 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 this is why you should fail. Having said all of this, Jim, I totally agree with you about responsibility. This government and this country has shown greater fiscal responsibility in the last 8 years than we have shown in the last 75. So cut us some slack. Give credit to India. We have transformed from a nation of shopkeepers to a nation of entrepreneurs. We've got progress through digitization. We are slowly replacing China as the manufacturing hub of the world. It takes a lot to change a nation, a lot of time. We're doing it in double quick time. Respect that. And as far as fiscal deficit is concerned, there's an old saying, with forms of government let fools contest. That which is governed best is best. Today, what is best for India is public spending. What is best for India is money coming to the hands of people who can then aspire to be like Jim, live in Singapore with very poor internet signals and still comment on the world. On that note, have a great day, my
And from Singapore to Uruguay, PK is also joining us. But before that, from Singapore to Uruguay, and joining us is Dr. Andrew Ferris, he's CEO of Ecognosis Advisory Limited. He's been a regular voice on our budget programs. Dr. Andrew Ferris, thank you very much. He has been, he analyzes asset markets with a particular focus on Asian economies. And he's been teaching at the London Metropolitan University and the City University of Hong Kong, authored several books. A fantastic person. Dr. Ferris, now budget day in India, progressively less important than it used to be as we grow into being a bigger economy. And we don't just look at these annual regulatory checks to determine the direction of our economy. But I want you to tell us the big picture. We are no longer looking at recovery, while China has just begun reopening to the world at a time when even its industrial policies have contracted in 2022. Now, question to you is, do you think the global market's more leaning towards India? And we've been aggressively pushing policies to emerge as some kind of a balancing force to China. Do you think the budget can do anything in that direction? Dr. Ferris?
Actually, no, all right, because the budget represents a relatively small amount of the overall spending. I'm very interested in two areas. One, I want to see how much the capital part of the budget is going to increase. It took nearly 20% last budget. And the second point, that's going to be very tricky. I want to see defense spending. Asia is a hive of defense spending. India cannot be lagged behind. And also India, is the third biggest importer of arms in the world. It's very interesting to see what the politics and the economics of the defense in this budget is going to be. Right now, I'm advising all my clients that the money is going to be made next year in equity markets that are connected with defense, because the world, whether we like it or not, is spending a lot of money on arms. It might be legally reprehensible, but that's the reality of it. And India is a major area in that. It's a major knot in that. I'm very, very aware of the morality of the issue, but I'm looking very carefully at what India is doing.
From a broader perspective, just before you came in, and the question always goes, there's a general election in India in 2024. Okay, you have a question. I think Dr. P.K. Basu wants to come in before that, Andrew. Dr. P.K. Basu is the chief economist of ICICI Securities. He's the author of the great book Asia Reborn. I think he wants to either make a comment or come in on what you said. Yes, PK.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting that you talk about defense as being really important. And India has actually done some interesting things on the defense front. There is serious import substitution going on. You know, India has been very dependent on imports of defense equipment from Russia. But over the last 4 or 5 years, and continuing every year, there is a list of items that are essentially banned. You can't import them, and instead it's being produced at home. So increasingly, I think there will be a need to focus on some of the Indian defense manufacturers that are emerging. It's a long haul. India has been very import dependent for its defense equipment, but we are now in the process of beginning to see a serious amount of successful import substitution, and
but
I
that's
think
going to take time, PK.
Some of the Indian stocks.
Some of that stuff goes into R&D. Abhishek wants to add.
Abhishek.
PK, you're a senior economist, but just a little bit of addition there. Import substitution, the moment you mention it, has a certain negative ring to it because of its past association with India and the socialist era. So I have to add there, because whatever import substitution is happening now is essentially being led by the private sector. So there are private sector joint ventures between those Indian firms and their foreign partners, and they are taking the lead there, be it in the defense sector or others. So that import substitution or Atmanirbharta is very different from what happened in the socialist past.
I want to go back to Andrew Ferris, and I want to spend next few minutes on infrastructure.
I mean, there's no
infrastructure.
That this
what happens is, what happens is, I want to go back to infrastructure. I don't want to get into just defense and import substitution, etc. I take your point, Abhishek. But see, we have an election next year, Andrew.
Oh, there was
right?
Jim.
Right, yeah, no, we have an election next year, Andrew, and we need this to be a growth-oriented budget, of course. Economists want fiscal deficit prudence, etc., etc. But with the kind of growth possibilities that the country has, and also the political factors, you would want to spend more in pro-people schemes. Can you still afford to, and should we go all out in our infrastructure push, Andrew? Even if it comes at the cost of taking a bit of leeway on these macro numbers.
Yes. Look, there's a very simple set of numbers here. Okay, the GDP growth of India in 22 was 8.7, in 23 was 7, and the 24 is likely to be 6.5. So India has been decelerating for 3 years. Fair enough, because of the COVID, because of the global situation. So now injection on infrastructure is very important. And here is where sometimes the money has been spent, but not spent widely, because we still go backwards and forwards on the area of transportation, on the area of railways, on the area of roads, and on the area of, let's say, even to the extent of airport building. Also, unfortunately, we cannot get away from the issue of decarbonization and the reduction of CO2 in the economy. And this could be easily combined with subsidies towards the area where India is a leader, and that is in solar energy and also in wind energy. And that is a combination of both investment and also climate policy. So it will be very interesting to see what happens there.
So would we expect then in that case, Nasir,
I think
more, PK. Yeah, PK.
I think just looking at industrial performance, for instance, the World Steel Association just published data on steel production in 2022, and India, of course, is the second biggest producer of steel. But if you look at the top 10 producers of steel in the world, or the top 9, the only one of the top 9 steel producers in the world that saw steel output actually increase in 2022 was India. China's steel output declined. India's increased, in the latest month, increased more than 9%. So we're seeing a structural shift. And steel, I think, is really quite important to any industrializing economy. India is now the second biggest producer. Last year, about 125 million tons of steel. If you look back at history, only one country has ever produced more than 125 million tons of steel in a year, and that is, of course, China. China produces 8 times as much, but China has massive overcapacity, and the world needs to address the issue.
Well, I think we should go. Okay, so my own take is, PK. My take is, PK, that this is the time for us to go all out. Let us bet on ourselves. I say, MR, bet on ourselves. Let all the doomsday talkers go to hell. Let us focus. Let us spend more on urban infrastructure. Let us still give the money to the states. Let us increase Gati Shakti outlay. Right? Let us increase our infrastructure pipeline. Let us increase our special financing schemes. Let's bet on ourselves.
Exactly. This is the moment, Arnab. We should seize it. And the government, in fact, should not be bothered about doomsayers talking about 6.5% fiscal deficit or 4.5% fiscal deficit. It is meaningless number. And I don't want a nanny out there to tell me what my BP should be or what my sugar should be. I know very well what it is, and I will manage because I am different. I am genetically different. I can manage myself. Jim. I have a huge domestic saving of 30%. Jim, you understand we have a huge domestic saving at 30%.
Did you just refer to Jim as a nanny?
Well.
He did. He did.
No,
as you know,
of course.
I love these budget programs on Republic.
It's one of my favorite countries in the world, but I care about your children. I care about your grandchildren. You don't care about your children and your grandchildren. I do.
See, you understand one thing. My fiscal deficit gets funded by my own domestic savings. My total borrowing from the outside world is less than 1% of my GDP. And if it comes, it comes. It doesn't come, it doesn't come. I manage my own capital. I manage my own fiscal deficit. I fund my own banks. The world doesn't fund me. So you understand, I'm a most stable country. And I have chosen a path of investment, recycling my enormous savings. Today, understand, my saving at a $3 trillion economy at 30% works out to close to $1 trillion. Where do I park it? I have to park it within myself, and I do it through the borrowings of the government, and I do it through the public sector banks.
Yeah.
What is your problem in this?
I don't know his problem. Every year I hope his problem goes away, Sohail. Every year he comes back with a bigger problem.
My problem is history and economics. History shows that
Jim's
if you
issues
debase
are
your
like Rahul
currency and your
Gandhi's.
balance sheet,
They have
you
a problem
suffer in
for
the
every
long run.
solution. If you give them a solution, they will present a problem.
If you don't understand economics, look at history.
No, 1 minute.
Okay, what's
wisdom doesn't necessarily come with age. You don't have to be a great economist in order to understand the economy. By that logic, a lot of entrepreneurs who then make it big in the world would have never. I mean, you have celebrated college dropouts, not we. You've celebrated school dropouts, not we. Jim, we reiterate the following, and your point is valid. The future of India is not going to be driven by Americans or Fijians or Norwegians. It'll be driven by Indians. Indians have shown over the past few years the following facets. Number one, great consumptive economy. Number two, tremendous resilience. Number three, the ability to innovate and to reimagine and recalibrate without disturbing the structure, the basic structure of the economy. Which country, Jim, tell me, would have done what it did for its people, what India did during the pandemic? Which country? Which prime minister would have taken a punt of shutting the country down? After we shut the country down, all you guys in the West followed, which is not surprising. We're a civilizational legacy. Y'all are Johnnies or Jims come lately. Number three, which country would have given free ration, free food to people who were going through the most devastating times in their lives due to the pandemic? So, Jim, cut us some slack. The last time we learned a lesson from someone in the West was in 1947. But when we unfurled that flag, we took charge of our own destiny. We became responsible. We're not an irresponsible country. We're not. We're not Pakistan. I think you've blurred the lines when you look at the subcontinent. We're not Pakistan. This is a country whose democracy has shown repeatedly that responsibility is embedded in not only our constitution, but in our hearts and in our minds. So we welcome your comments, we welcome your criticism, but we have a response which is both ethical as well as embedded in knowledge.
Oh, beautiful. He goes there. That's going to be a viral speech out there. And ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, how the markets are looking. We're going to be joined by Madhusudan Kera, Sushil Kedia, and many of our panelists, including Dipan Mehta, joining us in a few minutes. Please come back. We have to take a short commercial break. See you on the other side.
India cannot be ignored anymore. World leaders are cheering the India story.
Those powerhouses of their respective regions, and to a large extent for the world economy, as China and India are, you cannot ignore them. And you cannot dictate to them that they should develop the way which will continue to enrich.
India is being acknowledged on a global platform.
Lifestyle for the environment and his call for papers, I'm guided to the ancient texts of India and enlightened by their great respect for the natural world and the environment.
With the G20 presidency, the world is looking to India.
The impression of this country is that India is undeniably a global powerhouse. Not only is it a hard power, evidenced by economic scale and population, but also a soft power equipped with well-known films, cuisines, history, and renowned figures.
The bold moves on economic strides under the Modi government have gained global appreciation.
A lot has been done in the past years under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. Naturally, he's a patriot of his country. And his idea of make in India, it matters. Both in economic-wise and in the ethic. So India has made tremendous steps forward in development, and the future belongs to India.
India is undoubtedly the global bright spot. Now the world is watching whether Budget 2023 will be a catalyst to India's growth story. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
लिबर्टी जरूर लेना आवश्यक है. मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं. I identify myself with middle class, so I know. बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं. कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है अब तक.
The Dalal Street will be keenly watching out for the last full budget of Modi government 2.0. While it is a mammoth task for the finance minister to strike a balance between fiscal prudence and capital expenditure allocation, the market is anticipating increased allocation in manufacturing, pharma, defense, specialty chemicals and technology sectors. Market sentiment would also be determined on whether the government is on track to meet its fiscal deficit target of 6.4% of GDP for this financial year and the disinvestment target that would be set for the next financial year. Amid inflationary concerns coupled with recession fears, there are high hopes for tax relief in the budget. The salaried class expects an increase in basic tax exemption limit and increase in the limit for deductions under Section 80C of the Income Tax Act. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's recent comment raised many hopes for the salaried class.
मैं आने वाले बजट के ऊपर तो कोई कुछ बोल नहीं सकती हूं. और मैं भी मिडिल क्लास की हूं. मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं. आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास, सो आई नो. बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं. कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है.
While further expanding scope for production-linked incentive schemes is on the wish list, Market experts also believe that any tinkering with the long-term capital gains tax could dampen the investor sentiment.
We can expect a very good budget for the common man. I'm expecting that the exemption limit, basic exemption limit, should go from 2.5 to at least 3 lakhs, if not more. Same way, even on the ATC, which is the basic income tax deduction section. In the ATC also, we are expecting that it will go from 1.5 to about 2.5 if we go by the way inflation has been.
Businessman.
लिबर्टी जरूर लेना आवश्यक है. मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं. आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास, सो आई नो. बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं. कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है अब तक.
The Dalal Street will be keenly watching out for the last full budget of Modi government 2.0. While it is a mammoth task for the finance minister to strike a balance between fiscal prudence and capital expenditure allocation, the market is anticipating increased allocation in manufacturing, pharma, defense, specialty chemicals and technology sectors. Market sentiment would also be determined on whether the government is on track to meet its fiscal deficit target of 6.4% of GDP for this financial year and the disinvestment target that would be set for the next financial year. Amid inflationary concerns coupled with recession fears, there are high hopes for tax relief in the budget. The salaried class expects an increase in basic tax exemption limit and increase in the limit for deductions under Section 80C of the Income Tax Act. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's recent comment raised many hopes for the salaried class.
मैं आने वाले बजट के ऊपर तो कोई कुछ बोल नहीं सकती हूं. और मैं भी मिडिल क्लास की हूं. मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं. आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास, सो आई नो. बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं. कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है.
While further expanding scope for production-linked incentive schemes is on the wish list, market experts also believe that any tinkering with the long-term capital gains tax could dampen the investor sentiment.
We can expect a very good budget for the common man. I'm expecting that the exemption limit, basic exemption limit, should go from 2.5 to at least 3 lakhs, if not more. Same way, even on the ATC, which is the basic income tax deduction section. In the ATC also, we are expecting that it will go from 1.5 to about 2.5 if we go by the way inflation has been.
बिजनेसमैन जो है, क्योंकि अनऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर में आता है तो फोकस बहुत कम रहता है. एक तो लिमिट जो है मैं समझता हूँ कि इसको एनहांस करने की ज़रूरत है. स्लैब जो है उसको बढ़ाने की ज़रूरत है.
हमें बजट में ज़रूरत इस बात की है कि जीएसटी की नए सिरे से रिव्यू होना चाहिए, क्योंकि जीएसटी के अंदर अभी भी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड सिस्टम्स बहुत सारे हैं. वहीं दूसरी ओर इनकम टैक्स का जो स्लैब है वो निश्चित रूप से कम होना चाहिए. तीसरा, क्योंकि अब हम एक डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी वाले युग में जा रहे हैं और पुराना जो व्यापार करने का तौर तरीका है वो लगभग उससे भिन्न है, तो लिहाजा सरकार को चाहिए.
Okay, that's Nirmala Sitharaman, and Nirmala Sitharaman is standing there with members of her finance ministry team, and Abhishek will explain what happens next. Abhishek, Nirmala is leaving. Maybe you can explain the symbolism as we always do. She doesn't carry the briefcase.
Yes.
Go ahead.
All right, so she carries the Bahi Khata now, the red one with the golden emblem of India. And inside is an iPad ornament, so it does not carry the budget documents now. That thing has been discontinued now. It's all digital. And she's showing it the budget in the iPad in a digital form. I think that was done post-pandemic. the entire team there with the Finance Secretary as Somanathan also there, and the two ministers, of course, Minister of State. And now from here she goes to the President of India. As is customary, she presents the budget to the President. She comes back, has another tie-to-tie with the team, and then comes to the Parliament, where she gives the budget to the Cabinet for approval.
Yeah, and she's been holding all these, 8 pre-budget meetings with 7 stakeholder groups. A lot of people took part in the meetings, Union Minister of States for Finance, senior officers from the Ministry of Finance, secretaries, or those who are from other ministries. And this time, she also chaired her first pre-budget meeting with the first group of captains from industries. So she's had all the pre-budget rounds. And I would say right now, I wouldn't be wrong to say that Nirmala Sitharaman is an experienced hand in the finance ministry by now. And she has really surprised people with the direction she has given and the composure she's shown in very, very difficult times, Abhishek. Very difficult times.
Very steady hand. Very steady hand in shepherding the budgets, Arnab. And in fact, all through the pandemic years, remember, she has been helming these schemes like the PM Kisan Yojana, the PM Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, and the balancing act she has done with all these schemes that were essentially social sector schemes that put a lot of strain on the finances of the government. With the fiscal numbers, for example, we are told that we are going to keep the fiscal deficit targets and of course aided in good measure by the uptick in revenues that we have seen. But the fact of the matter is she has really kept a steady hand on the budget numbers, and I think she has not given any reason for the likes of Jim Roger to complain.
Well, markets are going to be opening soon. I'm joined by Dipan Mehta and Madhusudan Kela, and of course Sushil Kedia. To start with you, Madhusudan, good morning. What is the lookout? The markets have been facing volatility for the last few weeks. Now there was the smooth sailing of the Adani FPO, so at least that, was out of the way. So it's been a very nervous week in the markets, hasn't it? And now the budget. How does it look this morning?
So good morning, Arnab. Thanks for having me here. I feel quite optimistic about the budget. I feel the government's financial situation is in a great shape. I've been monitoring budget for last 20 years. This is the best financial conditions I have seen, wherein what the government projected last year, whether it is in terms of revenue, they have significantly surpassed it. And essentially because of the higher subsidy on account of higher food subsidy and on account of higher fertilizer subsidy, but for that, India's situation would have been even far better. So going into next year now, because the subsidies are not going to get repeated, so we are going to end up with paying some 5.6 lakh crore rupees of subsidy this year. I expect that number to be below 4 lakh crore rupees provided in this budget. And this year, the dividend income which came from RBI was also only 30,000 crores. So there is a leg room for RBI to give more dividend to the government to the extent of at least 1 lakh of crore rupees. So the government is starting with 2 lakh plus crore rupees of opening balance, if I may say it. So they have a lot of leg room to kickstart, expenditure, and I am very sure they will lead it from the front in this budget.
So what will the markets cheer for, Sushil?
Arnab, markets have in last 45 budgets never continued to go down if they were already down. So this Adani fiasco has already demoralized the markets. So the risk of a large upside noise broadly on the indices remains.
Explain this to me. You're saying the Adani issue is not over because it got fully subscribed, though of course it was only because of the high interest from the non-institutional investors and many family offices. You're saying it's not over.
Adani issue getting subscribed does not mean Adani issue may be over, because it's only 20,000 crores for who was the world's third largest man, and the uncertainty inside markets about the stuck positions. So we cannot just write it off that it's all over. Hindenburg is still.
What impact does it have overall beyond Adani?
Of course, creates it creates, of course, a removal of one big hindrance that FPO, if it would have bombed, would have become a real crisis. So the fight is on, and Adani is right now scoring.
Okay, so 1 minute. Interesting comment here this morning coming in from Sushil Kedia. Madhusudan, you've been a little cautious in your comments on Adani. Sushil, quite clear. He's saying the Adani issue is not over. It's just been handled. He's sort of giving the sense it's just been handled for the moment, right, Sushil? That's what you're saying.
See, it's always better to be a little risk-averse and cautious. Let the markets reveal what unfolds
So
next.
why is that significant on budget day, Sushil?
No, it's not really significant in the sense that last 45 years of budgets, markets, if they were continuing to go down ahead of the budget, were already demoralized and ready mentally to receive positively what the finance minister said. Only thrice in last 45 years, markets have continued to go up if they were going up and never continued to go down if they were going down. So I think the mental base is ready to welcome a lot of things the finance minister may say today.
I would have thought that
I
would have thought, Madhusudan, that people would be a bit relieved today after they wanted the markets would want the attention away from Adani. You know, it's been such a sort of a wet towel on everyone's optimistic mood over the last 4 days. Madhusudan.
I will simplify for you. What Sushil is trying to say is right. Basically, market has become lighter, and that is what you need when going into the budget. The expectations were low. There was this hangover of capital gains tax. I think it is quite unlikely that will get disturbed significantly in the coming budget. The people's positions, technical position of the market is very light. And if there is nothing untoward which happens in the budget, and I'll just emphasize this point, nothing untoward in the form of capital gains tax, then I think market is set for a very good rebound and good days ahead. And as far as this Adani issue is concerned, now the hump is over. What we should say that, this was one of the largest FPO being done in the current year, done by one of the largest group. That hump is over. So from a market perspective,
I'm sorry, but I can't resist a question on Adani. Your comment. I'm sorry, I can't avoid a question. Your comments on India's biggest family offices, biggest groups, coming and helping Adani out. Unusual, isn't it? People are commenting on so much fraternity within the Indian corporate space.
But in a way, it is good now to see people standing by when it comes to India's credibility. It is great to see that people are standing by to protect in a way India's credibility, because what would have happened, would have been really ugly had this FPO not got subscribed. For the whole of India, it was not only a question of one group, right? So it is good to see that people coming together and ensuring that it went through. And I must go on to say that I have had a good fortune of knowing Gautam Bhai for last 20 years. He is a man who has proven unprecedented execution in the last 20 years, and obviously created a lot of wealth for shareholders. So there is no reason for me to believe that the Adani story will not continue. Stock prices are a different thing. They are dependent on buying and selling. But Adani's story in terms of execution, in my opinion, will continue on the ground.
Yeah, I just also been saying recently to people that at the end of the day, please remember, Hindenburg is a short seller. They are not investigative journalists. As some people would like us to believe. Are you there, Deepan? Now is the line with you there? Deepan,
Yes,
I can't see you on the screen.
I'm there now.
Deepan, good morning.
Good morning.
Deepan, what are the markets going to cheer for?
Yeah, good morning, Arnab. Thanks for having me on your show. I think markets will cheer for stability as far as capital gains tax is concerned. I think that's really the only looming sword on the market. And if there is no tinkering done over there, be it with the holding period or the actual tax rates, I think we will go back all much more happier and at a better frame of mind. So I think that's the real requirement of the market. Apart from that, we want the interest rates to be softer going forward, because major industries like real estate and automobile are revving up and they are dependent on lower interest rates. So if the government borrowing is subdued, curtailed, and it provides more resources to the private sector, and I think that will be an added benefit. But I think all the focus is on the capital gains. And of course, if there's any relaxation on the personal taxation, it will really bring about the feel-good factor in the market. So let's keep our fingers crossed over here.
And what do you think? I mean, do you think the government can deliver on the proposal to shift the tax liability on buyback of shares from companies to individual shareholders? I mean, I've been hearing that if that happens, then the markets will really rally.
Yeah, I think that will be received quite positively because it is good for the companies per se. And it will perhaps encourage more companies to go for buyback. And it's a fair way of taxing as well. So I don't think that that's going to be a bit of an issue going forward as well. But I think the bigger issues are with government borrowings as well as with personal taxation and capital.
You mentioned government borrowings. You mean are the markets going to be very affected by the fiscal deficit?
Yes, absolutely. I think this is the time where we need interest rates to be under control. We need more resources for private lending, be it to retail or to corporates. We are seeing an upcycle in the capex spending of large corporates, and that needs to be supported by lower interest rates. I think in any case, I think exports are going to be impacted by recession overseas. So we need to focus on sectors and industries which are strongly domestic focused, like real estate and like automobiles. And of course, the capital goods, which after many years, we are seeing a turnaround over there, and that needs to be supported by lower interest rates.
What will boost the confidence, Madhusudan, of foreign portfolio investors? Because markets have witnessed huge sell-offs by the FPOs in 22 who think they see macro risks. What can the budget do to address that and sort of begin to give a sense of stability to help cut down the funds outflow?
So I think stable fiscal deficit, as I explained Arnav, and I anticipate that there will be stability in the taxation regime, a stable fiscal deficit, and proactive government spending on the capital expenditure side. Government has enough leg room, and they have proven. See, Arnav, what is the best thing about Nirmala Sitharaman is that whatever she spoke last year, on all counts, they have delivered. So there is no reason for us to doubt their credibility or the numbers which they present. So which is a very good thing from a foreign portfolio perspective. And now if I can take you back to budget even 4 or 5 years back, there were a lot of off-budget items. Like, there was in FCI, NHCI, there was oil subsidies in the form of oil bonds. Government took a bold decision last year and just cleaned it up at once. And they presented numbers which people can trust. And as far as the foreign investors are concerned, and now if I can take a minute, it has got actually nothing to do with India's story per se. It's just that Russia collapsed and Chinese market collapsed big time last year. So India's weightage on the overall emerging market went up arithmetically. And whenever your weightage goes up disproportionately, you have to sell it to rebalance. And that is what happened last year in the form of foreign selling, right? And this year, those markets are actually starting to do well. So some amount of money is going away from India to markets like China.
So what can
we should not read too much into foreign selling that
I get it, but that will change now, right, Madhusudanan? That process has peaked, as you have suggested.
Yeah, that should change. That's what I'm saying. That should change, and gradually we should see this selling recede in the next few weeks or so. That is my expectation.
A lot of people loving this conversation here, Deepan and Sushil Kedia and Madhusudan Kela. I'm so privileged to have three of you. So I must ask you then, take a few more minutes, Deepan, what might dent market sentiment? The mood is optimistic, but expectations are not very high. And for a bull run to continue, all the government, I think, has to do is to ensure that there are no negative announcements. That's what, am I right, Abhishek? Absolutely. Yeah, we speak to people, what can go wrong? They hate the fact that something can be negative. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Is that the sense you get?
There is a lot of space for tinkering and tweaking, but not do something which can really spook the market.
So business loves status quo.
Yeah.
Market loves status quo.
Because the numbers look so good on them. I mean, if you look at the bank loan uptake here, in the services sector and the industries. If you look at the purchasing managers index numbers coming in, they're looking good. If you look at the core industries data that has come in last evening, if you look at the GST numbers that have come in, everything looks so
but
good.
at the same time, you see the markets are saying, and maybe Deepan can explain this, that, oh God, this is the last fully implementable budget before the elections. So what if the Narendra Modi government goes fully populist?
But they've never done that. They've never done that in the last 8 budgets. Why would they do it now?
I don't think the Prime Minister is populist in his economic policy at all.
He believes in consolidation.
He believes in consolidation. If you look at Deepan, you wanted to comment on that?
Yeah, see, one angle I want to bring over here, that the government is in a very strong position, the BJP party, and they do not need to take populist measures. I think 2024 also, as things stand, I think they will have the majority over there. So there is no need to indulge in too much of populism. And I just want to highlight one aspect about capital gains, why it is so very important. I think one of the structural problems of our capital market was the way FIIs would come and sell in our markets, and that would completely lead to huge corrections, 10, 15, 20% or so. And what we have seen in the 2020s, in this decade, is the rise of the domestic investor and the retail investor, and they have been a good counter force to the FII selling. And a large part of the flows, retail flows coming into the market, do look at the tax structure, and which is very attractive. I think when we are also marketing equities to retail investors, one of the important things we highlight is the conducive tax structure, the favorable capital gains tax rates, and that's a big incentive. And any tinkering over there could affect retail flows, and then we'll be at the mercy of the FII. So I would say that, I hope that there is no negative news flow on that count, because we need this retail juggernaut to roll on over there to take on the might of the FIIs.
I just want to explain to all the viewers out there what he's talking about, MR. I just want to explain this to all our audiences, what all financial experts, including Deepan, who's fantastic. He's an NSE, BSE member, director of Elixir. What they are saying is they are warning the finance ministry indirectly. Maybe not warning is not a polite word, but they are cautioning the finance ministry against tinkering ahead of the budget or with the capital gains tax, because this can sort of, it could have an overall negative sentiment. I mean, there's always this fear of tinkering with capital gains tax, MR, I think, which is completely reasonable.
Yes.
What do you think, MR? That's what Deepan's talking about.
I think it's a well taken one, because as a chartered accountant, we grapple with this uncertainty in tax skills, entrepreneurs' spirit. Uncertainty and frequent changes. Even to change one line in some of the ERPs, it takes several weeks and costs a lot to change some of these tax changes that are ushered in budget. And on an average, we get somewhere between 70 to 100 changes in the budget. So my view is, Arnab, that it is time that the finance minister takes these cautionary advices seriously, does not tinker much with the tax structure, tax rates. They are all more or less settled. Yes, there is a headroom in terms of exemption. Exemption can definitely go up, and that wish will always remain. And as I say, dil mange more on this point always, that if you give me 5 lakhs, I'll ask for 10 lakhs. If you give me 10 lakhs, I'll ask for 20 lakhs. So
but at the same time, I want to ask, can I ask a simple question here? Maybe PK, you can put this better, Suhail, you can put it better. I want to ask Madhusudan, I want to ask Sushil, PK, you put it. I don't understand why our financial experts don't understand the basic, you have to take politics and everything along, right? I mean, there are times when you overspend, Sushil, you may see it as overspending. But it's all, the world is not operating in a vacuum. If this is my moment, and if I increase the fiscal deficit target, what's wrong? What's wrong if we go overboard a little bit on spending? Madhusudanan, what do you think?
I would come back. I think now, as I explained to you, the government has enough leg room.
Yes.
They are starting with 2 lakh crore rupees plus opening balance in this budget. And if they do something which is, let's say they increase personal taxation rate and people call it populist, I am with the government, they should do it. People are actually facing inflationary pressure, and the government recognizes that the world is going through recession, right? There is a talk of recession in the major developed countries in India. And if we front load expenditure in this environment by compromising a little bit on fiscal deficit, I see nothing wrong.
I like that approach, Madhusudanan.
Yeah.
I like that approach. Yeah, Sohail?
I would say we must not just not go overboard.
Yeah.
We must not.
We must
not go overboard. Like, if you say the government will do it by having 7% fiscal deficit, everyone will be nervous, including me. But if they tinker it from 5.8 to 6%, heavens are not going to fall.
So you see, Arnab, to answer your question,
That's the margin of.
to answer your question,
0.2-0.25%.
The problem in our country is we have more economic experts and economists than functioning traffic lights. Every guy is an economist. Every guy will give you
So Abhishek, he just called you a traffic light.
No, I said
Sohail has called you a traffic light.
Functioning traffic lights.
I'm not an
Functioning
economist.
traffic lights. He's a functioning journalist. Thank God, not a functional economist. But having said that, as this gentleman from the markets, even the markets are given too much of credence in India. How many Indians are actually invested in the stock market? Less than 2%. But markets are made out as if, oh, bhai, they'll change the world.
No, sir.
Kisi ko nahi parwah. Let me tell you, the guy who's doing his work, the guy who's making his money, the guy who's being entrepreneurial is interested in two things. Number one, making his businesses grow. And number two, looking at investment. All the investment doesn't come thanks to the primary markets. A, B. I think someone alluded to this. I think it was the gentleman from the markets himself. What Modi has done is he has brought about stability by being obstinate and at times mildly arrogant, which means that he's not going to get swayed by what you say or I say or anyone else says. A, B, they have a very clear path ahead. If you remember, Arnab, this is before you came this morning, I said, Nirmala Sitharaman and Shaktikant Das have been both outstanding in their roles. Nirmala as FM, Shaktikant as Governor of the Reserve Bank. No one expected them to be. Everyone was a naysayer. Why have they been? A, they have understood the vagaries of the business, and number two, they've stayed the course. They've been stable. They haven't flip-flopped. The problem with the earlier regimes was it was a flip-flop. It depended on which side of the bed or which bed the particular person woke up that morning, and then he would decide how India would be run. Today, India is run differently. India is run through the mind and not only through the heart. I also will say this, for all the abuse that Modi may receive, if you look at his track record in Gujarat, look at his track record at the center. Whatever Modi has promised, he has delivered, whether you like it or you don't like it. Whether it's Article 370, CAA, everything that Modi has said, he has done. There has been opposition, there have been naysayers. Has he steered? No. Has he swayed? No. So I think people in India, forget the markets, every Indian loves a stable government. Every Indian loves a government with a strong head on its shoulders. And every Indian loves a government that is willing to deliver in spite of all the headwinds. Yeah. Today, we are blessed to have that government.
Just to give you an example.
We are blessed to be part of a country which is slowly re-engineering, recalibrating, and reimagining not only our economy, but our lives. Yeah. Ultimately, economies are about dignity of life and dignity of living. Absolutely. And that's why we are blessed.
Oh, yes, we are. Abhishek wanted to add in.
Just quickly on Modinomics. So, for example, he is not looking at one particular sector here and there. 2 lakh crore rupees for the PLI, which goes to the industry, and similarly 2 lakh crore rupees through the PM Kisan to the rural economy.
Correct.
That's the balancing that the government does.
I wouldn't call it balancing alone. I mean, I think it's a different approach. It's not a textbook approach.
Yeah.
And if the Prime Minister has been able to balance out many things in the big picture, which traditionally, politicians have not been able to, and I think we must give him credit for that. Okay, so quick point, Madhusudanan and Sushil, will there be a rally today post the speech, you think? Sushil, will there be a rally? There's usually a rally. Will there be a rally?
Arnab, I think like all budget days, the markets are going to be very volatile during the day. We should not preempt the sequence in which the finance minister will speak and the order in which positions have been taken. So I like to give it a pass to guess a rally. It will be a very volatile day. Already we have had a rally ahead of, she rising to speak. In the last 2.5 days, we've had a substantial rally from 17,500 to now 17,900. I want to give it a pass.
Madhusudanan.
Arnav, I don't live for a day, honestly, and I have no, Sushil is very expert on reading charts and all. I have no way to predict what the markets will do. My intuitive gut feel is that over a period of time, markets will do really well.
I think they will. Deepan, last word to you.
Yeah, I agree with Madhusudan. Trying to predict today's market trend is extremely difficult. We also have a major event, the FOMC, that's the US Fed meets as well. And what their take is on interest rate, that also I think is a very important element and a data point that the street is tracking. But I think that intuitively today may be a good day, but let's see how it actually plays out. And the next few trading sessions post-market also are important because sometimes there is devil in the details, and that tends to take up a lot of the mind space and the attention of the players in the market.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank at this stage Deepan, Madhusudanan, Sushil, and with a promise to come back as we head towards 9:30. Quick break. Viewers, coming back.
11,000 placements last year. At Amity, we are committed to nurturing passionate, hardworking and proactive professionals.
India cannot be ignored anymore. World leaders are cheering the India story.
Those powerhouses of their respective regions and to a large extent for the world economy as China and India are, you cannot ignore them, and you cannot dictate to them that they should develop the way which will continue to enrich.
India is being acknowledged on a global platform.
Lifestyle for the environment and his call for papers. I'm guided to the ancient texts of India and enlightened by their great respect for the natural world and the environment.
With the G20 presidency, the world is looking to India.
The impression of this country is that India is undeniably a global powerhouse. Not only is it a hard power, evidenced by economic scale and population, but also a soft power equipped with well-known films, cuisines, history, and renowned figures.
The bold moves on economic strides under the Modi government have gained global appreciation.
A lot has been done in the past years under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. Naturally, he's a patriot of his country. And his idea of make in India, it matters. Both in economic-wise and in the ethic. So India has made tremendous steps forward in development, and the future belongs to India.
India is undoubtedly the global bright spot. Now the world is watching whether Budget 2023 will be a catalyst to India's growth story. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
लिबर्टी जरूर लेना आवश्यक है. मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं. आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास, सो आई नो. बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं. कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है अब तक.
The Dalal Street will be keenly watching out for the last full budget of Modi government 2.0. While it is a mammoth task for the finance minister to strike a balance between fiscal prudence and capital expenditure allocation, the market is
right, we have cut to pictures coming in from the Rashtrapati Bhavan, where Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman with her team has gone to present the budget to the President of India as is customary. President Draupadi Murmu there at the center, and the entire team of the Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman with her, the two MOS and the team of secretaries, including the Economic Advisory Team. Arnab is back, and in fact, yes, on the left, please. Yes, please. We are heading towards the 1.5 hour run-up to the budget, and we're going to have a fantastic panel joining us right now in a minute. Rajan Navani, Samir Manchanda, Yashish Dahiya. If I can see them on the left-hand side of the screen, on that camera, please. On that screen, it'll be easier. Producers, no, not on the left. Yes. Those are pictures. The finance minister with at Rashtrapati Bhavan. Yeah, Abhishek. Arnab, so the finance minister there, I can see the finance secretary, the two MOS there in the pictures. She has presented the budget to the president, and essentially the finance ministry team there, that was part of the preparation of the budget. Arnab, they are there, and after this, in fact, we are told that she has already left the Rashtrapati Bhavan and is on her way back to the North Block. In fact, yeah, she's on her way back to the North Block. She might already be there in the
Well, let's get
North
a few
Block.
more voices coming in. Yashish Dahiya, who's joining me right now, is the CEO and co-founder of the big insurance aggregator Policy Bazaar, which has become the largest insurance aggregator in India, valued at well over 1.5 billion. Yashish, good morning. How are you doing this morning, Yashish?
Well.
I always look up to you as we all look up to you as one of these incredible success stories from India. Worked hard, built a company from scratch, Sohail, and so motivated.
And the best investment that SoftBank made.
Best investment that SoftBank made, and a great professional. I would say Yashish is an ambassador of India's fintech industry. So I don't want to talk to you about fintech, Yashish. I want you to give me the broader picture. You're in Dubai this morning. Tell me how the world is looking at the budget. What are your expectations as an entrepreneur, as a business builder?
I think from an insurance industry perspective, I think we want more and more people to be covered with health insurance and protection against death, disease and disability. And for those, the budget could do more in the sense for health insurance, the limit is 25,000 rupees. It's a lot of money, but still for many people, especially, a lot of people, that becomes very low in terms of the total health expenditure. So I think expansion of that would be very helpful. And similarly, a separate category for the term insurance category would be helpful, because I think without that, it gets clubbed into the entire investment area, and that reduces the benefit to the consumer. Third thing I would say is reduction of the GST on insurance. There are many places to, make taxes, but this is something which has to be promoted. Our insurance penetration is very low. So that would be helpful. I hope to see some of the increments and some changes on these pieces as far as the insurance industry is concerned.
Okay, Yashish, also we are joined this morning by Rajan Navani, who's the Vice Chairman and Managing Director of the Jetline Group of companies. I call him a digital futurist. He's the National Chairman of the Confederation of Indian Industries Council on Future Businesses. He's made very, very interesting investments on digital, really quite a leader there. Rajan, you have said that we look forward to a progressive budget that resonates with Gen Z citizens. That's an interesting angle. What will make this budget a Gen Z budget?
So, Arnab, I think, for a country where 1 in 10 people in the world is an Indian under the age of 25, I think we are at a very, very strong inflection point, and that's the Gen Z, consumer. I think the Gen Z today really is looking at a budget which is going to empower them not only to be able to improve their livelihoods, but to be able to enable themselves to get skilled better, to be able to build capacity in them, to be able to unlock themselves to the true potential of what they can be. I think a big push to entrepreneurship, innovation, because adoption of new technologies, or what you talk of digital natives, really resonate with that generation. And they're not only going to build the next generation of businesses and create greater job employment, but also lead when it comes to, being able to create value both for India and the future. So I think what will really give them a big push is the ability to not only build upon their own individual capacities. So I think a good layout to be able to see how we can train, skill, create, more empowerment in them, but also to unlock the potential for entrepreneurship and innovation. And I think for that, there are a number of things that can be done, whether it comes from the regulatory side, whether it is from the, the IP protection of new technologies, the adoption of new technologies, and really somewhere improving and building upon the competitiveness of both, Indian entrepreneurs and Indian industry. And I think the last point is they're a very transparent generation, right? They believe in a trust-based ecosystem. And I think if there is a way for us as a country to use this generation to move into a more friendly and a more, I would say a trust-based kind of an environment between business, entrepreneurship and in government, I think we can make tremendous progress. And I really look to, a direction, a strengthening direction, and actually an accelerated move in that direction in this budget.
So this is a very interesting panel we have here, because person on the right is Samir Manchanda. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's been one of the greatest media entrepreneurs of the country and a chartered accountant. So we have three people at least here, Yashish and Rajan and Samir, who all built businesses. So we're talking entrepreneurship out here. Samir also has a great macro view on things. Samir, give me a macro view today, right? Let me put it to you. We are marching towards a 5 trillion economy at a 6.5% growth rate. We will achieve this in 2026, right? What do we need to do to outdo this? Samir, can you hear me? Okay, no, he's not getting my audio in. Also on the screen, ladies and gentlemen, is Uday Ved. Uday Ved, can you hear me? Uday?
Yes.
Hi,
yes,
Uday. Now,
Hi.
yeah, without doubt, Uday, I just have to ask you very broadly out there, if you give me he's the lead partner in the India Tax Practice Group at KNAV, and he's held key positions in all the big four accounting firms. So Uday, any reduction in the tax slabs, we were talking about it earlier, will boost the consumption rate, bring it down the fiscal problems. But how will the government manage the fiscal deficit at the same time if it changes the tax slabs?
So the tax collections are at a record high, both corporate income tax collections as well as GST collections. So there is definitely a legroom for the finance minister to do something. Again, particularly common man has a lot of expectations. So on the individual front, I would believe the slab rate should be increased. We have 2.5 lakh as a base limit, which is very old for many years. That can go up certainly. Or there is a tax rebate up to 5 lakh that could be increased significantly. There is also, in terms of saving life insurance premium, the limit of 1.5 lakh is like obsolete, I would say, and that maybe go up to 3 lakh. That has been the demand for last few years. Interest deduction on housing that can boost the housing sector. These are some of the things for the individuals. On the corporate front, I would believe the base rate of 22% for normal companies is okay, but a manufacturing sector of 15%, that exemption is there if you start before 2024. Certainly, there is a case to boost that, to 1 more year at least or more than that. Having said that, again, there has been a thought process whether there should be a difference at all between the corporate tax rate versus service industry and manufacturing. So there is also a case for making it low. The finance minister, in my view, definitely has a legroom to still keep the fiscal deficit intact. Every year they have done it whenever there was no leg room. So I would believe definitely this is a great year if at all something has to be done.
Yeah.
This is the year to do that, and it should actually bring more compliance. I would say widen the tax base, and to a lower tax rate. More and more people will file return.
Okay, on tax itself, I'm also joined by another view from Sanjeev Narayan. He's a managing partner of Ashwini and Associates, one of the best respected chartered accountancy firms in Delhi. So Sanjeev, do you think the government needs to rationalize the income tax scheme? Do you think they can do that in a pre-election year, altering the tax slabs which were introduced under the 2020 taxation schemes? And if so, what will be the most optimized rate tax slab for the middle class, according to you?
Well, Arnav, thank you for the introduction. But I would personally feel that there is a definite case for rationalization of personal income tax, because they borne the brunt of the pandemic and the inflation. So in the past couple of years, if you see the real effective tax rates, the quantum of deductions and the avenue of deductions available to the salaried class in the MSME sector has kind of shrunk. So there is definitely a more legroom for increase in the basic standard deduction and widening the base of the exemptions available to the salaried and the individual class. So that I would definitely feel. I would personally think of an exemption limit going up to rupees 5 lakhs for individual and corporate tax.
Oh, that'll be huge.
Individuals. Yeah, that's huge.
That's going to be huge. You think that can happen?
Yeah, I don't think that can happen. That's a wish list. But then nothing stops us from making wishes. And plus, I would also look at, the taxation for the super rich, the surcharge, that ultimately gets on to bite them very hard. So that should maybe look at rationalization in terms of the higher education.
We're watching closely because it's 1 minute 17 seconds, 1 hour 17 minutes to the budget speech. Samir, can you hear me now? Samir, good morning. Samir, good morning. He can certainly not hear me, otherwise he responds much faster than that. And Sumant Sinha is also with us. He's president of ASSOCHAM. Sumant, good morning. Can you hear me? The economic survey presenting very optimistic growth prospects. Adani issue a little bit settled, not a big issue right now. Gave a little bit of nervousness to the markets over the last few days. What are you expecting out of the budget, Sumant? Especially for SMEs, MSMEs.
Yeah, hi Arnav. Look, what I'm expecting from the budget is that the finance minister is going to present a prudent budget. I don't think it's going to be populist as given the elections coming up. I think that the fiscal deficit is likely to be targeted to be below 6% is my sense. I think they're going to try to ensure that borrowings are also minimized so that the interest rates ultimately end up going down. I see more spend on infrastructure, continuing from last year's theme of the government continuing to spend more on creating the capex cycle. I see the private sector also is going to join that party, especially if interest rates stay low. I'm hoping that there might be some cut in income taxes for the common man so that we can actually increase the consumption side and the demand side, which will then in fact spur the investment cycle even more. So I'm pretty optimistic that the budget will be prudent, will be fiscally conservative, and will continue on the path that the government has been following so far. I would also hope that the emergency credit line to the MSMEs is continued and increased in some way, shape or form so that we can actually broad-base economic growth in the Indian economy. So I think those are some of the things that one would expect to see in this year's budget.
Absolutely. I think Samir is on now. Samir, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. How are you doing, Samir? What's your overall take? I don't know if you've been listening to the conversation. What would you like to pick? I mean, let me ask you broadly. What do you think the corporate sector is expecting today? You've been a serial entrepreneur all your life. So what should we do to encourage entrepreneurs more? And can anything like that be done in a pre-election budget?
Yeah, but Arnab, I would just like to caveat saying that India is in a bright spot. I think, going into this budget with strength, even the IMF has said that 2023-24, the next 2 years also will be the fastest growing economy. So I would say the most important factor and the trend, which is a global diversification. Global corporates want to diversify from China. So it's a China plus one. We want to create jobs. So I would say the most important thing is, to broad base the PLI and if needed, even increase it because this is one chance that you get. And it's, it's also, if, I know Apple is coming, corporates are coming in, but a lot of people are still waiting to see where they are. And other countries are competing. So you have Indonesia, you have Vietnam, you have countries which are competing and are actually getting also their fair share. But we have enough, we have huge strengths, and the whole world is looking at us. I would feel this is a unique opportunity for us to really become the global hub for manufacturing. If we do that, look at the number of jobs. So I would say that's the one thing which we need to work on. And if the budget can actually amplify that, that would be a real great opportunity.
I'd like to take
the second, again, on the same theme which you've said.
Yeah, go on.
We all know digital India.
Yeah.
So reskilling and upskilling are again the two most important factors. If we have something for our institutions to get into reskilling and upskilling, I think in the next 10 years, we know the digital revolution taking place. We know the startups, we know the number of unicorns, but actually we need our workforce also to be reskilled and upskilled so that they can take advantage of this. So, I think those are two real main things if I would look into it. And those are, I would say, really, we have a unique spot. We need to maintain a fiscal discipline, and we just have to carry on with the earlier budgets which have left us very strong.
I'd like to get a response on the PLI point which Samir raised with Sumant from ASSOCHAM. In fact, Sumant, the survey was done by Deloitte, I think. It was 60% of the respondents of India Inc. To have an expectation of the government extending the PLI schemes. And there's a feeling that we should do that. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I think the PLI scheme has been a great success. We've already had a number of, I think maybe about 15-20 such PLI schemes, which actually has really encouraged manufacturing investments in a number of different areas, all the way from telecom, phone manufacturing, to battery cells, to solar panel manufacturing, textiles, etc. And I think it's very important because India does need to expand its manufacturing base, as we all know, very significantly, because that's the way in which we can actually create jobs across the country. Manufacturing as a share of GDP over the last several years has been falling. So we do need to make sure that we can do whatever we can to increase it. And I think the PLI scheme is certainly something that is encouraging the corporate sector to consider significant investments in manufacturing. Now, I would like the PLI scheme certainly to be extended quite substantially. We're looking at, for example, in the area of green hydrogen electrolyzers as being one area. We can also see solar polysilicon manufacturing also to be extended quite substantially. I think that could be another area that we could look at. And I'm sure that if we look at multiple other areas, there could be other opportunities as well. So I think the government can easily spend maybe another 1 lakh crores or more than that on a number of other PLI schemes across the country, which, as I said earlier, are very positive for job creation. And Arnab, you won't see the benefits of those PLI schemes coming through immediately. It will take time, 2 or 3 years at least, for the benefits of these PLI schemes to start manifesting themselves in the economy in the form of higher exports, a much stronger manufacturing base in the country, and so on. So I think it's a great investment that the government is making right now for essentially encouraging further growth and continue to give a boost to the economic growth over the next several years.
Okay, Sumant, I know you have to go, so thank you for joining me. See you after the budget. And on that, I want to go back to Rajan. I want to go back to PK, to Sohail, and also to Yashish. So the big thing, Rajan and Yashish, is that we're going to be outpacing this 23. This is the year when we're outpacing China in population. And we have a young population, we have an able population, and therefore we need to do something for job creation, right? Yashish, I want to go back to you. What specifically, if this government can do something to address the employment woes, because the budget 22 laid out the roadmap for 6 million jobs in 5 years and joblessness. But the fact is, we got to ensure employment. That's going to be a really big issue going forward. It could become a liability if not systemically addressed.
I think that's a very good point. And I think some incentive, if it is created for job creation and for training people into job creation, that would be extremely helpful. And I think also in the service sector, if the same could be extended, that makes a lot of sense. The second thing I would do is I would push a lot harder. I'm sure the government is already pushing very hard on various mechanisms towards ease of doing business. Lots of laws and regulations in almost every sector just need to be eased out, and I hope the budget also pushes further in that direction. And I think both of those allow further investments into growth as well as into training and upskilling of individuals. It's a pretty straightforward one. I think the incentivization needs to be created and the rules need to be made a lot easier.
Let's take Rajan in on that before I take the break. Will there be a shift away from services and tech jobs? Because there were reports recently of massive layoffs in the tech sector, and a growing demand in India for talents in non-tech sectors, including healthcare, food services, construction, education. So what do you see as the trend there, Rajan?
No, I think Arnab, what's going to happen is these layoffs are actually, I don't know if you've talked to some of the tech people who have got laid off, it's spurring them to go and become entrepreneurs. They're saying this is the time for us to take our next big idea, go out there and create jobs rather than look for jobs. And I think if they have to do that at a government level, we need to be able to see how we can support, the startup ecosystem. Because there are great global examples where ecosystems have been built. Like successful entrepreneurs, if they invest part of their gains or whatever they have made, from, building great startups back into entrepreneurship, there's some tax break given there. Government shares part of the risk in some shape and form, which gives some incentives and grants to spur this entrepreneurship. I was telling you earlier, this is the next decade, which is, I think, India's decade when it comes to unleashing innovation and entrepreneurship together, because that's what's going to define the future. While in the short term, increasing, the PLI and increasing, many of the aspects under manufacturing, services, etc. But I think new technologies, new innovation, young entrepreneurs building new ideas for the world out of India, I think is going to be a big, big opportunity, because the world is looking at India to bring their expertise and global knowledge, the energy and the youthfulness of the risk-taking appetite of the young Indian. I think if we can put that out there, I have a feeling that we have an opportunity which is very rare. And, I would really see, that we see a beginning towards that, or again, I said, an increased kind of emphasis to spur that, even in this current budget.
Absolutely true that, Rajan Nawani. Also, as I get to the break, viewers, please remember this financial year is crucial because India gets to make historic strides after taking over the G20 presidency. So will there be steps taken to encourage private investment? Will there be moves taken to increase forex reserves ahead of the third industrial policy? Will there be measures to remove cogs in supply chains? Lots of questions out there. Nirmala Sitharaman is heading towards Parliament. She just reached Parliament, and I'll go live with that in a few minutes. Short commercial break. Back soon.
The Dalal Street will be keenly watching out for the last full budget of Modi government 2.0. While it is a mammoth task for the finance minister to strike a balance between fiscal prudence and capital expenditure allocation, the market is anticipating increased allocation in manufacturing, pharma, defense, specialty chemicals and technology sectors. Market sentiment would also be determined on whether the government is on track to meet its fiscal deficit target of 6.4% of GDP for this financial year and the disinvestment target that would be set for the next financial year. Amid inflationary concerns coupled with recession fears, there are high hopes for tax relief in the budget. The salaried class expects an increase in basic tax exemption limit and increase in the limit for deductions under Section 80C of the Income Tax Act. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's recent comment raised many hopes for the salaried class.
मैं आने वाले बजट के ऊपर तो कोई कुछ बोल नहीं सकती हूं, और मैं भी मिडिल क्लास की हूं. मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं. आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास, सो आई नो. बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं. कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है.
While further expanding scope for production-linked incentive schemes is on the wish list, market experts also believe that any tinkering with the long-term capital gains tax could dampen the investor sentiment.
We can expect a very good budget for the common man. I'm expecting that the exemption limit, basic exemption limit, should go from 2.5 to at least 3 lakhs, if not more. Same way, even on the ATC, which is the basic income tax deduction section. In the ATC also, we are expecting that it will go from 1.5 to about 2.5 if we go by the way inflation has been.
बिजनेसमैन जो है, क्योंकि अनऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर में आता है तो फोकस बहुत कम रहता है. एक तो लिमिट जो है मैं समझता हूँ कि इसको एनहांस करने की ज़रूरत है, स्लैब जो है उसको बढ़ाने की ज़रूरत है.
हमें बजट में ज़रूरत इस बात की है कि जीएसटी की नए सिरे से रिव्यू होना चाहिए, क्योंकि जीएसटी के अंदर अभी भी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड सिस्टम्स बहुत सारे हैं. वहीं दूसरी ओर इनकम टैक्स का जो स्लैब है वो निश्चित रूप से कम होना चाहिए. तीसरा, क्योंकि अब हम एक डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी वाले युग में जा रहे हैं और पुराना जो व्यापार करने का तौर तरीका है वो लगभग उससे भिन्न है, तो लिहाजा सरकार को चाहिए कि एक एमनेस्टी स्कीम दी जाए देश भर के सभी व्यापारियों को कि 2022 तक जो कुछ हो गया वो हो गया, लेकिन 2023 से हम डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी पर चलेंगे. लेकिन 2022 तक का कोई भी अगर किसी की गलती है तो उसको उसके लिए दंडित नहीं किया जाएगा.
We don't have too much of fiscal room. But on the other hand, we had great tax collection also. GST collection has been decent. Income tax collection also has been okay. So there has to be something. So the government may give some tax concessions. And according to me, all these tax concessions are possible if government goes in for a major disinvestment drive. That's what I expect.
Will the budget lead to market cheer remains to be seen.
If the fiscal deficit target is met and the finance minister says that we are on target to meet next year's achievements and targets given in the FRBM, then the markets are going to give a thumbs up.
India cannot be ignored anymore. World leaders are cheering the India story.
Those powerhouses of their respective regions and to a large extent for the world economy as China and India are, you cannot ignore them and you cannot dictate to them that they should develop the way which will continue to enrich.
India is being acknowledged on a global platform.
Lifestyle for the environment and his call for papers, I'm guided to the ancient texts of India and enlightened by their great respect for the natural world and the environment.
With the G20 presidency, the world is looking to India.
The impression of this country is that India is undeniably a global powerhouse. Not only is it a hard power, evidenced by economic scale and population, but also a soft power equipped with well-known films, cuisines, history, and renowned figures.
The bold moves on economic strides under the Modi government have gained global appreciation.
A lot has been done in the past years under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. Naturally, he's a patriot of his country. And his idea of make in India, it matters. Both in economic-wise and in the ethic. So India has made tremendous steps forward in development, and the future belongs.
All right, we are back to our rolling coverage of the Union Budget to be presented by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman in just about an hour's time from now in the Parliament, in the Lok Sabha. And in the pictures we are seeing Nirmala Sitharaman getting inside the Parliament, in fact, accompanied with the Minister of State for Finance, Dr. Bharat Karad and Pankaj Chaudhary, both the Ministers of State by her side. That was a photo op with the red Bahi Khata and the budget in it for the cameras. All Honorable Nirmala has, the finance minister has reached the parliament.
And you know, this, what this makes, I want to stay with the pictures. I just want to say here that what makes budget 2023 special. Few words here. You know, 73 annual budget so far. This is the 4th straight budget presentation by Nirmala Sitharaman. You know, many people felt when she became finance minister, will she be able to handle India, take it through the choppy waters? But she has. She's presenting fiscal year 23-24, and by the way, she also holds the record for delivering the longest ever budget speech. So she delivered the speech for 1.5 hours long last year. Her longest speech was 2.42 hours while presenting the budget, Union Budget 2020, right? And this is a paperless budget available on mobile apps for the 3rd straight year. You know, it's not like when Abhishek and I were reporting in Parliament, we would go and steal 5 papers and say, oh, we got the 5 budget papers first, you know. That was the scoop of the day. All that's gone, you know, it's gone. We've democratized everything now. Democratized everything. You know, there's, but the halwa ceremony
and for making those kind of long speeches, she must be really knowing her stuff.
I do admire the manner in which Nirmala Sitharaman has conducted herself. And I mean, Sohail, no amount of saying that. And I last year I saw her when she said, I am from the middle class, I identify from the middle class, so I understand them. Very sensitive, very empathetic, very grounded.
A lot of grace. She doesn't have the attributes of a former finance minister whose entire life story can be summed up in 2 sentences. What Chidambaram doesn't know is not worth knowing. Contrary to that, Sitharaman is empathetic. She has a keen ear to the ground. She has risen through the ranks, and she listens. All finance ministers normally hear, but that's a non-cognitive function. If you have ears, you will hear. But Nirmala Sitharaman listens. And she has conducted herself in the most amiable, amicable manner, taken all sides on, been inclusive, and has been stable. You will never see an irresponsible comment from her. You will never see her, do things for populism's sake. To my mind, she, more than anyone else, has been the architect of India's economic stability. And for that, on this particular day, we need to salute her and her team. It's important to celebrate people like her in public life. And the more we do, the more inspired people will be to come into public life.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you. Niranjan Hiranandani, good morning.
I think it's worth just noting a few things about the...
Niranjan, good morning. He can unmute yourself, Niranjan. Unmute yourself.
Niranjan is in real estate. They're always worried about unmuting.
Am I mute? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Niranjan. I can hear you now. He's not like you, Sohail. He's just had a gym session. He's not like you.
No,
he has a 2-hour gym session in the morning, unlike you. Unlike you.
The signals in Powai.
I don't know. Please don't defame Powai on television. Okay.
It's the best thing that's happened after sliced bread. I love Powai.
Just a minute, please. I'm not getting Niranjan lined up right now, so I'm going to go across to Jitu Punjabi for his broad pre-budget expectations. Jitu, and Jitu, good morning.
Yeah, just put no. I'm not carrying my headphone. That's why I'm saying I'm on.
There you are, Ajay. That's Ajay Dua, ladies and gentlemen, former Commerce Secretary. Ajay, good morning. Good morning, Ajay. We also joined by Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General of CII, on the left-hand side of the screen, please. Aditi, let's move fast. A lot of guests coming in. Ajay, pre-budget expectations, former bureaucrat yourself. What do you think? Ajay. Ajay.
There's something happening today. I can hear you.
Yeah, go on, Ajay. I just want your pre-budget expectations. I think I'm having an audio issue. Yeah.
Are just a couple of them that the government will continue to eschew adopting a populist approach, which it hasn't done all these years, and it will also, at the same time, worry about a couple of facts. The first being that the global headwinds would continue to be neutralized by the domestic actions which have been initiated. That would turn into a couple of things. One, the government would make sure that the fiscal consolidation does not worsen the situation brought about by the global inflation. Number two, that the rural areas are given a degree of prominence so that they can build up the aggregate demand in the economy for the private sector to start investing. And finally, that the programs for employment generation, be it Manrega or Prime Minister's Awas Yojana, the Sadak Yojana, all these aspects would also have better provisioning than before so that the aggregate demand exercise bears fruit.
Absolutely. Niranjan, I think you can hear me now, and so can Chandrajit Banerjee. Audio lines are improving right now. Yes.
Was I audible?
You are audible now, Niranjan. Niranjan,
Yes.
Niranjan, your broad pre-budget expectations, not just from the point of view of the real estate sector, but of course in the broad context of infrastructure.
I think the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister has been able to meet and exceed expectations not only of Indian people or the people here, but the entire world. I think the challenge today is two aspects of it. One is to see that the growth aspect of it is focused off, and second, the elections which are coming next year. So there's going to be a huge balance between investments into things like infrastructure, housing, other aspects of growth in terms of manufacturing, and at the same time to be able to meet the social aspects. I think investments into infrastructure which has been created is going to create a multiplier effect in the economy in the year 2023-24, and that is what you're going to see through the budget today. So investments, you will see doubling in this factor, which has never ever happened before. That's the first thing that is happening. And the second thing which is going to happen is there will be several social measures which are going to come up, which will be probably for the first time on the health side, on education side, on the people's needs in terms of food, etc. I think both balancing will be done by the budget this time, more than any time in the world. Number two, the entire world is looking at India in terms of it. Because look at what happened in Pakistan, what has happened in Sri Lanka. So I think the difference is very clear how Nirmala Sitharaman ji has been able to manage the fiscal issues which have been done in the last couple of years. I think this is exceedingly fantastic, and we are looking forward to another balanced year which talks about growth of the people, but at the same time meets the expectations. So you'll see a balanced budget on this side.
But Chandrajit Banerjee, who joins us now, Niranjan, talks about a trilemma. I've heard of a dilemma, but I've never heard of a trilemma. What is a trilemma that in your view the finance minister faces, Chandrajit? Can you elaborate on that?
So I think I think that navigation through the trilemma is important, and I think there is, of course, how do you really help different cross sections of the society, which has suffered during the pandemic. How do you let them really get some tax cuts, etc., so that they are able to really not only just get relieved, but that will really also help the economy primed up through consumption demand. So and at the same time maintain the fiscal path. That's a very, very important thing to do. And there is so much to do on the fiscal consolidation, because the economic survey clearly says that revival is over. Now let's focus on the macroeconomic fundamentals. The second part of it is, as you heard, the global headwinds are very strong, and with the global
headwinds strong, with imported inflation, so to say, that we also suffer from. There is and with the monetary policy having done so much, so there is now a lot of what we need to see is on the fiscal side, to see how we can really focus and get inflation, get to really deal with the inflation. And the third point is actually growth. Really focus on growth, because that's where the government has done tremendous heavy lifting as far as capex is concerned over the last 4 years. Now private sector needs to kick in. Private sector is just about to also kick in. So a very calibrated approach in seeing how the private sector could be encouraged, and I would see that can be done with, again, certain things which has been started but needs impetus now, a strong fillip now. These are areas like decriminalization, issues of cost of doing business, ease of doing business, through those type of measures, which will bring in more of foreign direct investment as well as domestic investment.
Yes, just stay on that, because Jeetu Punjabi is CEO of M Invesco Capital Advisors. He spent a lot of time understanding and working in the global markets, in the private equity markets. And Jeetu, despite the global headwinds, I want you to talk about global headwinds. We've heard so much about global headwinds, but despite the global